Hey guys, Ranger here, and welcome back to another video. And this time, this is a reaction and review of the 20th episode of MLP, which is A Health of Information. Maybe the title is a take on a heap of information? I'm not really sure. I have no idea I really have no idea what this episode is about, except for, I know it features Fluttershy. It's the only thing I know, and I saw somebody's thumbnail that showed Fluttershy, so I think Fluttershy, maybe Angel are the characters of focus here. That's all I know. Starting video in 3, 2, 1, click.
Thank you so much, Zecora. We never would have found the crisscross moss without you.
Of course, I know where it grows, so it's not much to ask. Though retrieving it has been a difficult task.
Oh, but the oxen visiting Sweet Feather Sanctuary next week will surely appreciate it. It really adds a shine to their coat.
There we go. Now, that wasn't so tough. Fluttershy, tell me, will this be enough?
Gee, I don't know. It's a pretty big pack, so maybe enough to fill up this sack?
Oh my gosh.
You're rubbing off on me, Zecora.
Oh no. Oh dear.
Oh no. Zecora, are you alright?
No need to fret. I only got wet. At least now I can easily grab all the crisscross moss there is to be had.
What's happening to you?
Honestly, it's hard to tell, but suddenly, I don't feel so well.
Oh boy. So...
Alright, Zecora, let's have a listen to the old ticker.
Do you think it's serious, Doctor?
Has she been hanging around Doctor Who?
That's a good sign.
I can't believe a flower did this. I take back thinking it was pretty.
We're looking for any color other than red.
Phew.
That's bad.
It's just as I thought. I'm afraid you have a very rare disease called swamp fever.
Swamp fever?
Tell me, Doctor, what should I do? I've never heard of swamp fever, mind you.
Unfortunately, very little is known about the disease, except, of course, its symptoms. Change of coat, coughing bubbles, short sneezing, confusion, and the last stage, the afflicted turn into the very trees that drop the disease-spreading flower.
What?
Is there anything that can be done for such a terrible conundrum?
A cure has yet to be discovered.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Zecora.
Oh
It's
boy.
a lot to take in. I'll leave you two to discuss.
Thank you, Sir Dix-a-Lot.
Zecora, this is all my fault. If you hadn't been helping me get the crisscross moss, you wouldn't have gotten swamp fever. I'm so sorry.
Fluttershy,
It's not your
you're
fault.
not to blame. These things happen all the same.
I refuse to accept that. There has to be some pony who can help you.
Oh, there's a healer of legend who never would fail. But I only know her from ancient folk tales.
Who?
Mystical and masked, she came in the night and cured everything from hoof cough to fur blight. What became of the healer, no pony knows, for she disappeared ages and ages ago.
The
So she's probably dead.
mask, of course.
So
My
she's
parents
probably
would
dead.
Tell me about her whenever I was sick in bed.
There's so many accounts of her power to heal. She can't just be a legend. I think she's real.
If
Okay.
that's who we need to cure you, then I'm going to find her. And I know just the pony who can help.
Twilight!
Twilight?
We have a... Oh, she's gone.
Twilight! I'm so sorry to bother.
Twilight has just become Lucille Ball.
Cooking?
Yeah, Spike and I are having a cook-off.
My cauliflower bites blew her sweet potato muffins out of the water.
I
I'm glad you're here, Fluttershy, because we're gonna need a second opinion about that. They're both delicious, but Zecora has swamp fever and there's no cure and it's all my fault, and the only pony can cure is the mystical mask, and I need your help to find her. So what'd you pick? Cauliflower bites, right?
By default, you win.
That's the last book on ancient ponies, and still no mention of the mystical mask.
Why did I just think of Aku Aku? I think it was, or
the books on rare plants,
yeah, Aku
and the
Aku
entire
from
section
Crash
on
Bandicoot.
habitation.
Why did I just think of that?
Every book in the entire library, but I know we'll figure it out. Oh.
The entire library. Oh my gosh. Zecora will be dead before you can find a cure.
Oh, another dead end. Have you found anything yet, Twilight? Twilight? Guys, are you okay? I'm fine. Fluttershy, you know that I want to help Zecora, but I think we'd be a lot better off if we got some sleep. We've been at this for hours. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how late it had gotten. No problem. I'll grab you a pillow and... Oh, no. I meant you should sleep. I can't rest until Zecora is healed.
Flutter?
I understand how you feel, but I still think we'd have more luck if we tried again in the morning. Just promise me you'll take a break soon.
Adorable.
Good night, Fluttershy.
I really love Fluttershy's determination here.
9 by 13-inch pen.
What?
What's all the commotion here, ladies?
Sorry, but I figured out who the mystical mask is. You did? All I had to do was cross-reference a book about masks with another book on ancient equestrian healers, then use a third book to translate it all from Old Ponish, and there it was! Zecora was right! The mystical mask wasn't just a legend. The mystical mask was Mage Meadowbrook! The ancient sorceress from Hayseed Swamp? We studied her at Celestia School. Are you sure? Absolutely!
I love the faces in this.
Wasn't just a sorceress. She was also a healer, and back then, healers wore masks so they wouldn't get sick themselves. Fluttershy, I am so incredibly proud of you for using your research skills.
I'm incredibly shocked.
But Meadowbrook lived ages ago, and didn't she disappear? But if
No,
we
she
go
probably
to
died.
Hayseed Swamp, maybe we can find something she left behind. Something that could lead to a cure.
Swamp.
It seems like a long shot, but I guess it's possible.
Swamp.
We have to try. I've got a route all planned out, and on the way we can check up on Zecora and then... Whoa. We're leaving now? Of course! Every second we spend waiting is a second Zecora is coughing bubbles. But Fluttershy, you haven't slept, and that's a long journey. There's no use trying to talk me out of this, Twilight. We've got no time to waste. Can we at least grab some breakfast? I packed cauliflower bites. Aw, no sweet potato muffins?
I love this episode. It's adorable. I love this episode. It's adorable.
That's when I realized the mystical mask was actually Mage Meadowbrook.
That's marvelous, Fluttershy. I am quite impressed. While you're gone on your journey, I'll try not to be worried.
Oh no, Zecora, you didn't run. You must be getting worse.
No, not at all. Something small?
Oh crap!
That's it. We have to go now. Lead the way, Fluttershy.
Ow. Yep. No sleep. No sleep. Whoa. And cue zombies.
So, where do you think Meadowbrook lived? I'm not sure. Maybe there's some pony we can ask. I think we might be the only ponies here.
I love the atmosphere, and I love the sound of water
Where's that tree?
rushing underneath the dock. Whoa!
Yes, this has to be it. It's just like the illustrations of her home. Any pony who lives in a tree is okay by me.
Flutter. Knock.
Well, if the doorway is sealed up, just have to dig our way in. Back up, Twilight. I don't want you to get hurt. Or we could try the handle. It really blends in with the bark. Easy to miss.
Whoa.
Wow, looks like this place has been abandoned for years. Twilight, look! It's the same kind of lily pad that gave Zecora swamp fever.
Maybe she was studying it before she disappeared.
Was looking for a cure for swamp fever too. Do you think she found it? I hope so, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're making your excited squeaking noise.
That wasn't her.
I wasn't making my excited squeaking noise.
Oh, whew.
Y'all can stop screaming now. Didn't mean to scare you. I do that a lot.
Scare ponies or rock creepily in the dark?
Both, I suppose. Name's Cattail. Pleased to meet you.
Likewise, but, may I ask, why are you at Mage Meadowbrook's home?
Oh, I take care of the place. I ain't much of a cleaner, but from what I hear, my kin wasn't either, so I doubt they'd mind a few cobwebs in our ancestral home.
You're related to Mage Meadowbrook?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, Twilight, we did it! Not only did we find Mage Meadowbrook's old house, we actually found one of her descendants. Honestly, I would not have guessed it.
So you're looking for some kind of cure, huh? Well now, I know Meadowbrook was known to always be riding in the circles. If she had the cure you want, I reckon that's where it'd be. Come on, I'll show you the library.
Library? Now we're talking! Oh, well, libraries come in all shapes and sizes. This is good. It'll take us less time to go through everything.
Everything is not
Today,
categorized.
my mom made me eat peas. Peas are yucky. And we can probably skip this one, unless she found a cure when she was a fool. I met a colt today. He pulled my mane, so I put a frog on his head. Also not helpful, but I do kind of want to see where it goes. Wait, listen to this. Today I tried again to brew an unsniffle elixir. And I finally got it right.
I like her design. Cute. Oh! I love her design,
I
actually.
think it's time.
Really
you
good.
got
I like it.
My very own healer's mask. You think I'm ready, Mother?
Mm-hmm.
Like her design, too.
What caused this?
Mother calls it swamp fever. We've been trying to find a cure, but it hasn't been easy.
What happened to the other pony? That's what happened. Oh, no.
Wildfire.
That's what happened to the residents, isn't it?
I fear if
Oh,
we
no,
don't
your
find
mother.
a cure soon, every pony will be in grave danger.
She couldn't find a cure.
With Mother sick, I didn't think I'd ever find a cure. But staring at those cursed flowers today, I saw something.
They're not effective.
Please!
What?
I realized the flower's poison didn't affect the blush bees, and
What?
if they were immune to swamp fever, their honey could be the cure.
Again, I like her. Uh-oh. Ah! Ow! Ow! Ow.
They were so aggressive.
Ow, gosh.
defending their hive, I didn't know how
Ow,
I was gonna
gosh.
get it. Here goes nothing. Today, I cured Mother and the rest of the bayou. It was the greatest feeling I've ever experienced, and I promised to dedicate my life to curing ponies all over Equestria.
And she did just that, right up till she disappeared without a trace.
So all we have to do is find those aggressive flash bees and get them to give us their honey. Of course, it doesn't say how she did that. What? Is my mane messy?
Oh no!
I haven't slept in a while, but... Oh no! I've caught swamp fever!
I'm having, flash... Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
Are you sure these are necessary? What? I said, are you sure these are necessary? Yes! I won't risk infecting you or Cattail. What you can't risk is getting any sicker. If you don't rest, your symptoms will only get worse.
You really should rest up before going up against those flash bees. They are nasty critters.
You don't know this about me, but I'm pretty good with animals. And besides, Dogtail,
Cattail.
Zecora is counting on me.
Fluttershy looks
Just like
good
Meadowbrook
with her
helped
mane
her
ruffled up.
and all those bayou ponies long ago. Fluttershy, as much as Meadowbrook took care of other ponies, I'm sure she also took care of herself. You're not gonna change my mind, Twilight!
Ooh, being sick, she sure is strong.
It's Fluttershy. You don't know her like the rest of us do.
It's just up yonder.
Are you sure you don't want me to come with you? No, it's too dangerous, Twilight. Besides, I've already gotten one friend hurt. I won't let it happen to another. Whew. Okay, Fluttershy, you can do this.
You know, I can see myself in Fluttershy. Like, we're being hurt or feeling bad. I'd be doing the same thing. I would torture myself if it meant not hurting someone else I cared about.
Hello, Flash Bees. I was hoping I could get some of your honey. Oh, I see. I don't know others have any. Well, I'm sorry, but I really need it.
Ow!
Didn't want it to have to come to this. Then I just had to use the skin.
Oh my gosh, we haven't seen this. She's too sick to use it. Ow, 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 ow.
You really are aggressive.
Don't tell me she's going to black out.
Oh dear.
Oh no! Cute face.
What happened? Where am I? I'm so glad you're okay. You're still in Meadowbrook's tree.
You fainted, but Twilight shot some magic up and caught you. It was crazy.
Goodness gracious. Have you heard from Zecora? Is she okay?
We got word your zebra friend has started sprouting leaves.
She's already turning into a tree? I thought we'd have more time. Actually,
I'm thinking back to
3 days.
Season 1, Fluttershy, I'd like to be a tree.
You were asleep so long we were afraid you wouldn't be able to move when you woke up. But thankfully you just wore yourself down. Oh dear, we have to get back to the hive. I've wasted so much time.
Now hang on there, Fluttershy. Those flash bee critters are tricky.
Cattail's right. I can't even use magic to calm them down. We'll have to find another way to get the honey.
We've tried everything from disguises to things I won't even speak of. Ugh.
He's been through a lot these past 3 days. Wait, disguises. That's it! I know how she did it! I know how Meadowbrook got the honey! This is how Meadowbrook got the honey from the flash bees.
She threw a mask at them? I wouldn't recommend that.
No, the male bees aren't aggressive around the queen bee, and this mask has the same stripes that she does.
Oh, I thought it was reference to the birds and the bees. I thought that was a bee mask. Sorry. Sorry, I mean, I thought that was a bird mask. I thought that was a birds and bee thing. It was crossed. I like that.
I can't watch.
Mind over matter. Twilight, it's working.
Hey, she's cured.
I think she's cured now, Fluttershy.
Oh, I do feel fine. And this honey is divine.
Oh, you're rhyming again. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you, Fluttershy, for all you endured.
I imagine people are going to ship that.
Not be cured.
Oh, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have been sick in the first place.
Regret is not what you should feel, because on this journey, you've learned a great deal.
That's true. I certainly learned that if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of any pony else. In fact, if I had rested, like Twilight suggested all along, maybe I would have thought to use Meadowbrook's mask sooner.
Please tell me you found the cure.
How did you get it? Oh, Zecora. Or we could do what you did, bud. Well, this is a lot to take in. I'll leave you to it. Okay. I really enjoyed this episode. And there was a lot of things that was really interesting about this particular episode. This was a really good, solid Fluttershy episode. Something that it was interesting to see another episode actually focus on. Pardon me. Another episode actually focus on Fluttershy, and her. She got a little bit more development, and not as far as the growth of her actual character, but we saw more of her character in depth. We saw a little bit more of how far she'd go to save a friend, even if it meant hurting herself or possibly killing herself in the process. But yeah, I mean, it was something that she did, and obviously she should have taken Twilight's advice, got a little bit of rest. But again, you know, it's easily understandable. And I could honestly say that Fluttershy was in a panic. She was panicking, and that's why she was overworking herself. She was stressing herself out. And if you put yourself in Fluttershy's shoes, yeah, you're not going to be thinking about taking a break if a friend is in danger. Like, honestly, putting myself in that situation, I would think, no, man, that'd be selfish for me to try to get some rest. Like, I'm going to do what I can. And so, yeah, I'm not going to lie. I do the same thing as Fluttershy did, except, you know, nobody can use magic, so yeah, I would fall from a tree to my death. But, again, I really enjoyed this episode. I really did. It was a nice, solid episode, and it was interesting to see. It was really interesting to see more, to see that there was a little bit of, there was like some friendly bonding between Fluttershy and Zecora. It was also interesting to see Fluttershy and Twilight in this episode as well. It was really interesting. It was really cute and fun actually see that dynamic between those characters. And something else is very interesting is this actually had a little bit more focus on Zecora herself, which is something that we actually haven't had very much of at all within the actual show. And we got some interesting backstory, which was really cool to see. And again, story-wise, I really enjoyed this episode. Like, Zecora is made sick by a flower that she hasn't encountered before, which is something interesting. Like, but of course, even Zecora, she may be skilled at what she does, but there are still things that even she doesn't know. And this is one of those episodes that shows that there are still things that are outside of her natural craft, and she was exposed to that. And if it wasn't for Fluttershy's dedication and her friendship, Zecora would have became a tree. And again, one thing that I have to note before I forget, first off, was the concept Fluttershy could possibly turn into a tree. And we had the going back to going back to one of the episodes earlier in season 1, whenever Fluttershy made the mention, "I'd like to be a tree," and then I believe it was also in Fallout Equestria, Fluttershy was transformed into a tree of some kind that Little Pip actually encountered. And Fluttershy was made back into a pony again, and was able to, it ended basically with Fluttershy telling the tale of Little Pip, I believe. Please forgive me if if my info is incorrect on that, but again, so this is really interesting. And it's kind of like it makes me think of that. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed how determined that Fluttershy was to try to help her friend. And it was very intriguing how Fluttershy was able to go through those books and take 3 different books and study them to be able to actually locate where that character was. That Fluttershy, how she was able to cross-reference books like that and actually locate and actually find a Meadowbrook's location. Like, that's just shocking. Like, you would honestly not expect that to be within Fluttershy's character. But I love it that it was part of it. I love it that, again, it further shows that these characters are so much more to them, so much more to their characters that we still don't even know yet. And it was worked in there. And the interesting thing about cartoon characters, and, you know, it honestly wouldn't surprise me if some people have complained about this episode, about that particular aspect, saying that, oh, let's throw this in 7 years later about Fluttershy's character. Honestly, I don't have a problem with it, because it does feel natural. Unlike human beings, I mean, with human beings, our character kind of develops as we grow. And there are aspects about our characters that some aspects about us change a little over time, others stay the exact same. With a cartoon character, with a cartoon character, there's always room. You have a basic plan for how the characters are. But with a cartoon character, there is always room to be able to add a little bit more to their character. And so this is one of those moments. And honestly, I love it. I think it's really cool that Fluttershy was able to do that, and we got to see that little extra addition with her character. Another thing to take note of that I want to mention is how Fluttershy, even while sick, how strong that she was. And there was this, you could analyze this, I can, and say that for me personally, I saw two different aspects of Fluttershy. On one hand, or one hoof, we got the natural shy Fluttershy in this episode. Yet again, at the same time, we also saw a bit more of the assertive, more of the self-confident Fluttershy. This was a bit of a combination of the two. I think more of the latter was a bit more present, but again, I really love what they did with Fluttershy in this episode, showing her determination and her strength and her willpower to help out her friend. She was putting herself through physical and emotional and mental strain just to try to help out. She didn't want to waste any more time than necessary, and she was wearing herself down, exhausting herself to her limits just to try to help out a friend. And honestly, that is very, very admirable. That is something that, like, honestly, yeah, you can say that Fluttershy went about it the wrong way. But again, it's also easy for me to look at it and say it's very much relatable. I mean, put yourself into Fluttershy's shoes. You think that you've hurt a friend physically, like, not emotionally, but physically. You think you ask a friend to help you out, and they go, okay, for example, for me, you ask a friend to come by and help you move some furniture. While lifting something, they pop their back. If it were me, I would blame myself. I would blame myself. I would be thinking to myself, you know what, if I had never asked you to help, your back, you would not have popped your back. You would be fine. I would be blaming myself for that. Others could say, no, dude, it wasn't your fault. It was going to happen. Still, I'm the one that put them in that situation by asking. And so I would always blame myself for that. Now, let's go with that a little bit further. Something happened that it was endangering them. There was something that triggered that was advancing with their health. And so I could take it upon myself to track down a cure. I would. And again, I would be frantic as well, because like I would be blaming myself, and I wouldn't be wanting to lose a friend because of something that I did, well, at all. But again, I can easily understand Fluttershy's perspective here. I really can see it. And I also really love the dynamics here between Fluttershy and Twilight, just how that actually played out. And the interactions with the characters, they were cute and comical, yet they were real, intelligent, and I mean it felt natural, it felt realistic, it felt soft, cute, and fun, and like I said, intellectual. And I really enjoyed how that they did that. And Fluttershy basically learned, and overall the lesson was, if you can't take care of yourself, then you can't help take care of others. And that is true. That is a really true lesson, because again, there are times whenever you can be trying to focus, you can be trying to do something. Like, some of us have been there before. I have been there plenty of times. You're trying to do something. You've been trying to put a lot of strain on yourself mentally. You've been trying to cram a lot of things together into one. And you're wearing yourself out. You can feel yourself getting drowsy, but you keep pushing. That's whenever it begins to affect you, because you can't focus. I can't focus. And so I can easily relate to Fluttershy here. She was stressing herself out, and she was wearing herself down mentally and physically. And it was affecting her performance. It was affecting her focus, her mentality, her judgment. And whenever you're tired, it does. Yeah, you can't think. Like, comparing your brain to an engine, whenever you're tired, not all cylinders are firing. As you begin to get tired and wear yourself down more and more cylinders begin to fire less. To your 8, if you have an 8-cylinder engine, you might have, I don't know, you might maybe have a 1 or 2-cylinder engine. And so yeah, you're running on fumes. And Fluttershy did learn that you have to try to take care of yourself if you want to try to help take care of others. That is very true. And I really enjoyed how that they did that here. And it was interesting for Fluttershy to be the character that learned that lesson. And I really enjoyed what they did here. I really enjoyed it. I loved it, actually. And again, one thing that I have to say is, it would not surprise me if there were people out there who would look at this and say, how come Fluttershy is learning this so late? 7 years, why is she just now learning this? Again, I'm going to apply reality to this. I know this is a cartoon, but still, I'm going to apply reality to this. No matter what age you get, there's always going to be something you're going to learn. If anyone can look at me right now or type in the comments and say, yo, I'm old enough to know, I already know these things, there's nothing more I can learn. If that's your mentality, please go ahead and unsubscribe from me now, because I don't want to have any association with someone who has that belief. We all learn, regardless of how old we are. There will be lessons that we will continue to learn throughout our life. There will never be a moment whenever you're done learning. You're always learning something new. And regardless, even if it's been 7 years and the characters are still learning lessons, still, there's been things we have learned in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, that you didn't learn before. And again, this felt natural. I really loved it. I loved the pacing of this episode. It was soft. It was kind of a slow pace, but I loved it because of that. It wasn't fast paced. It was action packed. It was a nice, solid, comfortable feel, and I really loved it for that. And again, I really loved this episode with Fluttershy. It was a cute, fun episode with her, and I really loved what they did with it. The dynamics and interactions between Fluttershy and Twilight and Zecora were really well done, and I really love the lore and the backstory that they did with the characters. And it did leave some interesting things to take note of. And so, story-wise, I really, really enjoyed this episode. I really, really did. This is definitely one of my more favorite Fluttershy-based episodes. Now, going over some details, there's some different things that I really want to take note of. There's some things I really want to take note of. And first off, the concept of Zecora standing so dangerously close to the edge of this rock, yeah, you could probably say, hey, Zecora's old enough to know, why didn't she do something a bit more safer? Hello, these characters are more relatable and more like human beings, more like us than what we really give them credit for. No, how many times have you been doing something and realized, oh crap, I probably should not be doing this way? How many times have you not thought and been trying to cut something with the blade, with the knife cutting towards you? I've done it. How many times have you been trying to do something and realized, and then you just stopped and realized, oh, this could possibly injure me badly if I proceed this path? Now, those are the moments whenever you actually realize you're about to screw up big time. But we don't always have that moment of thought. We don't always have that mental process. There are plenty of times whenever something just happens and then you learn your lesson not to do that anymore. It's called a moment of stupidity. And even the most intelligent of people can have those. You are never safe from a moment of stupidity. We all have them. We all have them, and we will all have them. Some of us more so than others throughout our life. And again, like I said before, it was interesting that that Zecora had no knowledge of this flower before. So this was out of her expertise. This was something that she did not know. This is also something that I'm really glad that really glad that this is something that they actually did, because because again, having an all-knowledgeable character who knows everything, it kind of feels like a cop-out. It really does kind of feel like a cop-out. And so I'm really glad that they actually had something where even Zecora didn't know. And it was something that they had to figure out that on their own. They had to learn. And so having a moment where one of the other characters got sick and it was Zecora that knew it, yeah, it kind of feel like, okay, well, Zecora is the all-go-to individual for herbal potions, things like that. And again, even people that actually delve into that in real life, there are things that is still out of their field that even they don't know that they're still learning. And so I'm really glad for that. I'm really glad that they went with a realistic portrayal there for that. This doctor. Now, there was a couple of grim things in this episode that I kind of have to make a point of. The guy said that about, the doctor said we have to make sure that this vial, that this does not turn red. And then boom, it turns red. And one could probably say, "Oh, that's blood." Again, it's left up to your imagination. If you want to imagine that the bubble could have been like possibly saliva or something, composed of saliva, and this stuff actually exposed some sort of chemical that transformed it like that. Again, not really sure you can analyze it like that. But this guy, again, now the concept of someone turning into a tree, yeah, that does seem, now, okay, that kind of does seem a little far-fetched, with the concept of a character turning into a tree. Like, it making them deathly sick, I could see, but the concept of them turning into a tree. Yeah, that is a bit far-fetched, but then again, this is a fictional magical world, so anything is possible. You really don't, honestly, and that's something else, you honestly don't want to go with an all-natural, realistic... I mean, yeah, having some realism in a show like this, and a cartoon, is a good thing. But having too much realism is a bad thing. Having too much realism is a bad thing. Because whenever you get to the point that it seems too realistic, you're basically just watching cartoon characters in reality. There's enough reality outside your front door. And again, this doctor, we have seen him before, but yeah, this guy here, just like, this is a lot to take in. I am sorry. Well, I hope you'll still be alive to send me my paycheck. That is, like, honestly, how quite a few doctors are today. Like, I'm sorry you're sick. Please make sure you send me my paycheck before you die. Like, this guy just didn't give a crap. And I know, okay, realistically, yes, doctors do have to deal with a lot of stress, a lot of sick people that may not get better. I understand that. But a good portion of doctors also have a reputation. But a good portion of doctors also have a reputation for not caring about their patients. It's just, take 2 aspirin, call me in the morning, kick them out the door, make sure you send me that money. This guy kind of seems like that. I'm sorry, but any redeeming factors that this guy had before, he just kind of lost it for me. This guy just kind of seems like your basic, generic, only cares about the paycheck doctor. And to be honest, I kind of feel that that's a good thing and both a bad thing. It's a bad thing because, again, it's a really realistic tone. It's comical, but it kind of makes you think, do these ponies have no real good health care here? Like, no real doctors who actually can do anything. Which makes you think, okay, that's why they have Zecora. Because Zecora actually cares about the people. Her pony, she actually cares about her patients. This guy does not. And again, it's also comical because it's a realistic tone. It's something realistic put into the show where you actually have a doctor who seems to just don't give a crap. And here he is, like, well, make sure you send me my paycheck. Adios, amigo. Bye-bye. And out the door he goes. So again, it's comical. It's bad in the sense that I think that I kind of can't help but feel sorry for the people or ponies that have to go to this guy. But at the same time, it's comical because it's realistic to real life. And the moment Zecora makes a mention about the Meadowbrook, you could say, oh, well, that's sudden exposition there. Like, that's sudden exposition that we've never delved into before. And while you could say that it is sudden, that it feels a little bit sudden, like just out of nowhere, like let's come up with some exposition just for that. At the same time, you could say that in reality, it also feels real, because there are things in our life that we do not know about other things out there. For example, just take space. There are things we don't know about space, and we're learning something new. Like almost every day, we're learning something new. And how long have we been doing space exploration? From the first journey to the moon, we never learned everything that there was to learn. There's more lore out there, and there's also lore about ancient history, about the Earth itself, about ancient civilizations that we don't know. And heck, look at Atlantis. Nobody knows what happened, or at least, I mean, sure there are some theories, but no actual concrete evidence. And nobody really knows for sure. And then you have the concept of aliens, you have the concept of ghosts. Yeah, people say ghosts don't exist whenever there is pretty clear evidence that they do. Again, no matter what, this actually feels realistic because in this world, just like our world, there are things out there that are beyond our knowledge, that people have been researching for years, and they are no closer to finding out the truth. And then there are things that just suddenly pop out of nowhere that we're like, I just now learned that. Lore, ancient history, things about our ancestors, about ancient civilizations, things that we never knew before just suddenly comes to light. You're not going to discover it all in one go. And this feels realistic in that sense. Twilight baking. I love this point. I love this segment. I honestly love this for more than one reason. Number one, it's cute. Okay, that's one reason. Number two, it's funny. Okay, that's two. Number three, it feels real. It feels natural. Like Twilight is the princess of friendship now. It's great to see her just having fun, just doing something just off the wall crazy, just doing something calm, just having a pastime instead of having to check over documents, um, just check out reports, just attending different ceremonies, different meetings because she's a princess of friendship. Here she's in her kitchen having a baking contest with her little buddy Spike. I love it. I love it. It's different. I mean, and it feels more natural. And again, a lot of people were worried whenever Twilight got her wings because they were like, the show's over, it's coming to an end. Because they thought this is going to radically change Twilight's personality. It's going to change what she does in the show, how we perceive her, how she interacts with her friends. To me personally, I don't think it's really changed anything, but it's added more to it. It's added new possibilities. Before, you would not be able to see Twilight flying with Fluttershy. Now you can. It added new possibilities to the show. I felt the same way about Kim Possible whenever Kim and Ron began dating in season 4. I know some people were upset and thought, no, I mean, this was way, okay, the internet was still going on there, but you didn't, I'm pretty sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that internet critics, reviewers, analysts on YouTube were not as prominent, especially not for the Kim Possible fandom, as it is for the MLP fandom. And if it had have been, then I can guarantee there would have been people that would have been upset because Kim and Ron began dating. They would have been saying, they should have still stayed friends. This is going to destroy the show. Why did they have to go with romance? Why did they have to go with the trope that, that a male and female cannot just be friends, that they always have to begin dating? I know for a fact that's what people would have been saying if Kim Possible had have came out now instead of back whenever it did. That's what people would have been saying today. And so the good thing about Kim Possible, it came out before all of this, and like its fandom is still a good fandom. I mean, there's still active people, but regardless, it's safe pretty much from that. But here, people were concerned with how Twilight was going to interact with her friends, how the show would feature her. And like I said, I think it just added more to it. I don't feel that it took away anything. I feel that it added more to it. And here is another good example. Now, this isn't the only example, of course, but this is a really fun example. Like, Twilight's not reading a book, going over friendship lessons. She's not going over documents that Celestia sent her. She's not preparing to go to an important meeting with a bunch of delegates. No. She's in her kitchen having a bake-off. And she looks like Lucy from I Love Lucy during the famous segment with Lucy and Ethel in the chocolate factory. That's what I think of here. I mean, look, Twilight's just adorable here. And so, and again, I love this scene because it feels natural, it's cute, and it's showing the more adorkable, nerdy, geeky side of Twilight that we have seen prior many times before. And again, I really love how this handled. And it was interesting, like, for me personally, it felt like a kind of a bit of an interesting difference here, because normally Twilight's all about books, but here she actually seemed to not be wanting to go through all these books together. Maybe that was just me, but that's kind of something that I noticed. Now, I'm not saying that, like Twilight is changing, that her personality is changing. I'm not saying that at all. But it just kind of seemed like, like she really wanted to get back to the bake-off. But at the same time, I can kind of surmise that it's because with becoming the princess of friendship, she had other responsibilities with books, and so she was happy to take a break from that. And we see Twilight just dozing off, on a book, and I really loved how Twilight. This moment is probably going to go into the behaving like a cat segment. Whenever this is probably going into the behaving like a cat segment with Twilight, how she suddenly jumps up and either falls or dives. I cannot tell. She falls or dives or a cross between behind the books, and then yeah, she falls, and then she pops up with her head, with a book on her head. And again, this is Twilight. Who's down? This is Twilight. On the plus side, this will give Twilight a chance to reorganize her books, which we all know she pretty much enjoys. And again, I really enjoyed this segment here. Whenever Twilight tries to suggest to Fluttershy that she get some rest. And again, there was some really adorable faces that the characters made in this segment. I mean, like tired Twilight with little floppy ears, little drooped ears, is really well done. And you can also see a scrunchy nose Fluttershy. You can also see a scrunchy nosed Fluttershy in the background, like squinting with determination as she pours herself in over this book to try to find something. And then we see the adorable yawn from Twilight, and we also see Fluttershy reaching for another book as she's probably getting ready to cross-reference the book. And we get to see one last look of her with a look of sadness as she begins to lose hope that she might not be able to find something. This little moment where Twilight in her sleep makes a mention about the 9 by 13 inch pan, a baking pan. So yeah, she's still thinking about the bake-off. She's still thinking about that little baking contest there, which is cute. I can only imagine how fan artists are going to take advantage of that 9 by 13 inch concept. But that's how my imagination works. And then, again, comical, but then again, you know, it's honestly realistic. Whenever Fluttershy bursts through the door, and to the point that Twilight falls off the bed. And then she pops up and says something about non-stick pan. Again, this is hilarious, and I love it. Like, early morning Twilight is hilarious. Twilight really had some adorable faces in this, and again, this felt more like Twilight, like we'd seen before in earlier seasons with her adorableness, or with her rather adorkableness. This really felt quite a bit like that. And again, there was a lot of adorableness in this episode, just freaking adorableness. There was a lot of really adorable scenes in this episode with these characters. I love what they did with this. It was really adorable. And again, we see the faces with the characters. And another little moment that I really particularly enjoyed was whenever Twilight... and this little moment whenever Twilight makes the mention about grabbing some breakfast, I honestly love that. And honestly, I can relate to that because, you know, whenever I get hungry, and I know many other people can relate to that, whenever you get hungry, you can't focus. And to be honest, I'm the kind of person that whenever I start getting hungry, if I don't get something to eat, I start getting irritated. And I start getting angry. And until I get something in my stomach, yeah, not pleasant. But again, this was a really cute moment here. And then and then Fluttershy holds up this bag, and I thought, okay, and it's interesting. I thought Fluttershy, this was something either she made or something she just threw together real quick. Something like maybe went to a quick restaurant, grabbed something, and I loved how that they did that. And honestly, this was really cute. Whenever Fluttershy makes mention about she packed cauliflower or something, and Twilight's just like big googly eyes, and she's like, "Oh, no sweet potato muffins." You know what? This is so cute. This is just so cute, and honestly, I can relate to Twilight here. Not between cauliflower, sprouts, or something like that. I'll take the muffins. I'll take the muffins. So again, this was really adorable. And like I said before, with Twilight being an alicorn now, this actually gave her the ability to fly. Otherwise, you would have seen the whole basic generic thing of the characters maybe taking a train, which seems to go all over Equestria, to the location, or just walking. And so I'm really happy. Honestly, it really works in the show's favor here that Twilight has wings, because this is a means of travel for the characters. This is a means of travel, and it honestly takes less time to fly than it does to walk. This is basically the pony, like, essentially the ponies are like helicopters, with like the Pegasi and the alicorns are like small, fuzzy, adorable helicopters. And you can, like, you can walk, which is like the Earth ponies, or you can take the Pegasi or the alicorn way and just fly. And yeah, so yeah, it takes less time to get there. If the characters had to walk, they would have been a lot more wore out, and it would have taken much longer to actually get there. Now, I know others would probably think, how come Twilight just doesn't use teleportation? There's two different perspectives that one could have with how magic works with unicorns and alicorns in this show. And I'm not sure, different shows have different rules with teleportation. I don't think this is my personal thoughts on how teleportation works. And again, if anyone has anything to add to that, or any other theories or any actual facts, whatever, please feel free to actually enlighten me. But this is my personal theory. Teleportation for the characters works as such. They can't teleport to, this is my personal belief, they can't teleport to a location that they're not sure of where it is. That's like trying to drive to a location that you've never been to before. You have to use a map to try to show you where to go. And I think the teleportation can also still be a bit random. It's not exactly pinpoint accurate to where the characters actually go. Imagine, like, comparing that to, say, fast traveling in a game. It can put you about, like, dead point in the center of it, or it can put you, like, just outside the town limits at the entrance. And I think it's kind of like with okay, a really good comparison is like Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Skyrim, in that you cannot fast travel to a location that you haven't discovered yet because you don't know where it is. I think teleportation works in the same way. The characters, if they haven't been to an area, they can't fast travel there using teleportation. And also, I think teleportation, it's not exactly bad magic. It's not like illegal. It's not bad mojo. I think that it's just something that the characters don't usually do. I think essentially it's kind of like looking at it like it's too easy. It's essentially like one could compare it to if we had the ability to fast travel, to teleport to locations, it would make things very quick for us. But at the same time, it would be bad for our health. Because instead of walking or taking the time to actually travel to the location without walking, you're losing exercise and your health will deteriorate. Also, if you don't drive to the location, you miss out on the scenery and everything around you, even if you traveled there before. And so I think using the magic is taking the easy way out. And you could probably say the characters are choosing not to take the easy way out and fast travel or teleport everywhere. There's also a concept that teleporting could be kind of dangerous, in that the characters have to have direct mental focus and focus directly on where they need to travel to in order for it to actually work. And otherwise it could backfire and send them someplace where they're not prepared to go. And you could kind of make a comparison in a sense to like Doc Brown's Time Machine and Back to the Future. It's not a guarantee where it's going to send you, it's just, here's a location, you're not sure where in that location that you'll actually end up. Now, thinking back to a segment earlier in one of the episodes for MLP, I think it was it was in the first season whenever Twilight had the tickets to the gala, and she accidentally teleported herself back inside of the library. She had no idea how she did it, and so I also think it's possibly something that's not really familiar to them. Teleportation is something that, even as unicorns, it's not really something that they're completely familiar with. It's not something that very many folk do, and so it's not something that they're really. It could be considered a dangerous art. It can be done, but again, you could have possibly a lot of mental focus in order to go to the location where you are trying to fast travel. Sorry, I keep saying fast travel, where you're trying to teleport to. Otherwise, it could be dangerous and take you to a location you're not prepared to go, or it could even backfire terribly. So again, as far as the why don't the characters just just use the pony variation, the alicorn variation of fast traveling, it's not really a safe bet. It's kind of, okay, essentially imagine if they did create self-driving cars, where it would take you to your location without you having to do anything. And it was cheap. Like, you could walk, I'm just saying, for me personally, if I walked onto a car lot, they had a self-driving car for $10. No freaking joke, just $10 solid. It would drive you where you needed to go. You just input where you want to go, and it automatically takes you there. What's the fun in that? I'd rather take my trucks and drive. I'd rather take my trucks and actually actually know the feeling of actually operating a vehicle instead of just sitting back and letting it do it for me. Now, this particular location with this swamp is really interesting, and it kind of gave me flashbacks. This is like a swamp bayou kind of thing, and there was a couple different thoughts that I had regarding this area. On one hand, this kind of made me think about Resident Evil. I believe it was Resident Evil 5 in the swamp-like area where the zombies were, or whatever, Ganados or whatever they were coming out on you. And like, this was a good setup for that, even though this is MLP. This was kind of a really good setup. It was interesting to see this abandoned town, and there was no explanation for what actually happened with the residents. Just it was long abandoned. And this is something I will detail about also briefly. Now, visual-wise and sound-wise, there are two different things to discuss. First off, I really love the visuals for this. Like, you have the swamp fog, you have the fog like rolling across the water, obviously as the evening sun is setting. I love the color of the sky that they're going with here, and I love the desolate, like, abandoned and just eerie, creepy feeling that this town has. Also, sound-wise, like I said, I love the sound effect here. You can hear the crickets, and you can hear the water like rolling underneath the docks. It sounded really, really well done, and I really love that aspect about it. Also, visual-wise, this particular tree where Meadowbrook lived is also really detailed. I mean, just the way that it looks, the detailed structure, the overall structural build, and the detailing for the branches that twist and turn in every single direction. This is really well done. It's not just a basic generic design. I mean, there was a lot of attention to detail put into this, and I'm really happy that they actually went with that. And the concept here of Meadowbrook, and this is something also interesting, and I will detail this later. This will probably be the last thing that I touch upon. The mystery and the history of this place. Inside this old house, you have the concept of it just being just long since abandoned, just nobody there, nobody having lived there for years. And this guy that was introduced, like whenever Fluttershy and Twilight heard this rocking chair, if this wasn't MLP, I would honestly think that they were going to show a like a skeleton or something just sitting there. And if this wasn't MLP, if this was like a more higher rated show, they could have showed a skeleton sitting there. But yeah, it would have been a bit dark. But it was interesting that it followed through with showing this one guy living there by himself, trying to take care of everything, trying to preserve the family history. That's also really cool. I really like the design for Meadowbrook. and her mother. I really like the design for them, especially Meadowbrook. She looks cute, and I love her voice. I really like her design and just her attitude, how she just her design, her personality. It's really, really well done, and I really, really like it. This one character that shows up here, that one character that shows up here as well, I love her design. I really love her design as well. It's really cute, and there was something, honestly, whenever I found out that all the townsfolk suddenly had this disease, my first thought was that's what happened to everybody. Like, let's just look outside, check the trees, that's probably them. And then I had a few different thoughts for this. Number one, my first thought was, okay, all the characters turned into trees. She couldn't find a cure, and everybody, including her mother, transformed into trees, and she possibly ended up joining them, and they never could discover a cure. My second thought was everybody transformed into a tree, but she couldn't do it, and she felt like she betrayed everybody, like she let everybody down, and so she just packed up and left, and nobody heard from her since. The next thought was everybody just died off, including her, and again, never actually discovered a cure. And so, yeah, I kind of had some dark thoughts with that. But again, it was interesting. She was like pretty much the same thing was happening to Fluttershy that was happening to Meadowbrook here. A friend, only in Meadowbrook's this case, her own mother, was sick with this disease, and so Fluttershy, like Meadowbrook, was tasking herself with trying to find an actual cure to help someone that they cared about. And it was interesting, the design for these flash bees, how they were designed, just the single white slits and the black eyes, and um, I'm really glad that they didn't go with a fuzzy light design for bees because I kind of have a bit of an insect phobia, and so I'm really happy that they didn't go with. They went with a more sleeker design for these bees. I also really like the intellectual thought process with this episode, with the concept that just maybe the honey could have some sort of healing properties in it that would enable them to be able to create an actual cure. I really love that thought process with this episode. It really works and fits, and it's really well done. It's really well done. It's not so simple. It's not a simple thought process. I mean, it's actually quite deep. And something else that took me by surprise with this particular episode was whenever the bees began to sting this character, whenever the bees began to sting her. Something I wasn't expecting was they actually went as far as to show actual scars, cuts, lashes on this character's face. I'm happy that they went with that, honestly, because it would not fit. It would not be realistic if the character just got stung and then fell from a tree and have no injuries at all. It would seem too simple, too lighthearted, too much a kid show concept. Here they actually went with showing deep lashes, and actual blood on the character, like deep scars on the character's face. And I really like how that they did that. It added a nice realistic touch to that, and it really, really fit. I love how that they did that. And I also really like how that it said that she cured her mother and the entire village. But again, it does leave something to question, which I will also detail later on at the end of this. And of course, Fluttershy contracted what Zecora had, and I just now noticed her saddlebag has little butterflies on it, like her cutie mark. That's interesting. I also really liked here how determined that Fluttershy was, again, to get the cure, to get this. And it was interesting how Fluttershy tries to use her natural element here of talking to the bees, but it wasn't working. And this also goes along the lines of, again, like I said prior with Zecora, even though Fluttershy is good at talking to animals, there are still times whenever she's going to encounter an animal who will not listen to her. And this is actually realistic with people, in that sometimes you can find somebody who who can understand you, you can understand them. But there are times whenever somebody is just too hard-headed, too bullheaded to just understand reasoning, to just listen to anything, and your best bet at that point is just ignore them. And again, I really like, dang, that's a bright effect. The glow around the bees, that's a bright effect, man. But again, I like it how that it shows that there are times whenever Fluttershy runs into someone who, or animals that are not going to listen to her. And I really like that. It feels natural. Then that moment whenever Fluttershy tried to give them the stare. It was interesting with that. Fluttershy tried to give them the stare, which we haven't seen very much of. I mean, that became a popular thing back in Season 1. At the end, that became a popular thing at the end of Season 1 with the Grand Galloping Gala with the stare, I believe it was. I think it was. No, it wasn't the Grand Galloping Gala, I'm sorry. But, of course, we got the stare with Fluttershy, and it's been a common thing that Fluttershy has used in a few episodes since, this being actually one of them. But obviously, the stare isn't going to work on everyone. And it didn't work on the bees, but you could also possibly attribute it to that Fluttershy was tired. And so it didn't have the same effect. She didn't have the same mental focus, and so that you could possibly say that's why it didn't work there. And like with being tired, you could possibly attribute it. Her tiredness was, her fatigue was taking its toll on her. That and being stung by multiple bees. And so she was beginning to just lose her focus, and she just completely blacked out and just lost all consciousness. And woke up to realize that she was safe and sound in this old bed. And, you know, I'm kind of a germaphobe. I am a germaphobe. So I just kind of wonder, could be the bed that this guy sleeps in. I hope, because if these sheets, nothing has been changed on this bed for years. That's not sanitary. That's just not healthy. But it was interesting whenever Fluttershy realized that the color texture for this particular mask fits that of the actual bee pattern. That looks like a toucan. That looks like a toucan mask, kind of, with the shape of the beak. I thought it was like a birds and bees reference myself. Sorry, that's my mentality. That's my mind. Sorry. Okay, no, I'm not. I really liked what happened in this episode and how they were able to actually, like, they found a cure. Fluttershy learned a lesson, and we got to see more with that, with Fluttershy's character, and this guy at the end got his comeuppance whenever he came back and was like, "Oh, I'm turning into a tree." And again, I still stand by my thought. Well, I'm sorry, this is a lot to take in. Bye bye. Now, there's one thing that I have to question, and it's very, very interesting, and it's a very interesting thing to think of. There's some lore here. What happened to Meadowbrook? What happened to her? What happened to the townspeople? All they know is that she disappeared. What happened to her? And there are different things that, I mean, like, I honestly love how that there was no conclusion at the end with what happened to her. All they knew was that she just disappeared. I love how there was no conclusion. It adds a really nice element of mystery to the episode, and I happen to be a mystery nut. I love that concept. Now, the few different theories that I can immediately develop for what could have happened to her, what could have happened to the townspeople. Number one, another disease, like a plague or something. It began to spread throughout the village, and some ponies got sick, not all, but some, and they couldn't find a cure. And so the village was almost sort of quarantined in a sense, that the surviving members left the village. It's a dark thought, but again, that's one theory. Number two is, again, going with the plague or disease thing, but everybody contracted it, and nobody survived. A third theory is that because Meadowbrook, because of her, what she was able to do for the village, something happened to her. She disappeared, and the other ponies contracted something that Meadowbrook couldn't actually. Meadowbrook, yes, Meadowbrook. Okay, okay. I wanted to make sure I was actually pronouncing that correctly. Yes, like all the villagers contracted something, but because Meadowbrook was gone and never returned, they all passed away, and nobody still knew what actually happened to her. And another theory for what happened to the villagers is going with reality. Something otherworldly happened, something unexplained happened that caused everybody to just flee the village. Maybe something happened and they believed it was cursed. Maybe a curse was placed upon the village. Maybe something happened that they believed it was cursed, but it wasn't. And so they just packed up and abandoned the village. Because the structures still stand. And we've seen that some of the stuff was left behind. The masks from Meadowbrook. Why did she not take those with her? Another theory that I have is maybe something happened to her. Maybe she went on some sort of expedition, a journey or something. Maybe she was doing some research, some field research, and maybe was on a mountain. And again, these are more dark thoughts, but like she was on a mountain range, fell, or something just happened to her. She died unexpectedly, and nobody knew what happened. But it still doesn't explain the townsfolk. But again, one theorizes is something. My theory, and this is kind of one that I'm going with, is maybe something just happened. Something happened with the village. Well, it does, like, that guy, Cattail, he was a descendant of Meadowbrook. But he didn't say anything about the village. So there's a question. Has he lived there? He couldn't have lived there all his life because he would be lonely. So, is it possible that he was born somewhere else? Heard about his descendant Meadowbrook and went back to the village there and maybe just visits there sometimes to tend to it. Again, there's a really good mystery here. There's a really good mystery for this, and I don't know anything about it, but again, there's a really good mystery here. But again, I really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed the story. I like what we got to see with Fluttershy and with Twilight and with Zecora. I love the lore and the history with that village, the things that we actually saw with that. It was really well done. And again, I really enjoyed this episode. It felt like a really good, solid episode, and definitely one of my favorite Fluttershy episodes. I really enjoyed it. But again, that was my thoughts and analysis on the episode. So again, thank you guys again. I really want to thank everybody at Hasbro DHX. Thank you all so much for this episode, for all the hard work and everything that you put into it. Thank you all so much. And again, to everybody that's watching, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you again for joining me, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next video that I do. Take care.